Welcome to Charts Today. It is Wednesday, the 26th of August, and today I'm going to look at the Dow Jones constituents, the world's largest companies, and we'll just have a run through. This is actually the Dow Jones future. It's quite difficult to get data on the actual indices these days. Basically, you have to pay a license fee, but the future is a way of effectively looking at the list. And so here, looking at the Dow Jones index relative to the Nasdaq. So it just shows you recently we've seen a little bit of an improved performance. And this is set to 100 at the start of the year. So we did see that the Dow was underperforming the Nasdaq by around 14% up to June, but that has now reduced to and nearly got back to parity. If we look at the long-term trend, we can see that the Dow Jones, the defensives, if you like, has massively underperformed the Nasdaq, but that may be changing just as we see tech falling a little bit out of favor, and we're seeing the defenses coming back into play. So that's just an interesting thing to do, and so we can also do that for the S&P. So again, we look at the future. If I turn that into a tracker chart, we can just see. So that was the Dow relative to the Nasdaq. We can look at the S&P relative to the Nasdaq, and again we're seeing an improved performance. So here the Nasdaq was really moving on those chip stocks. So the S&P was underperforming. This is the future, and then we're seeing that outperformance. So really quite key there. So let's look at the individual stocks. And so first of all, the thing I like to do is just click on the top column, and the first stock in the list is Merk. And this jumped 12% last week, but really interesting that not only did we jump 12% last week, we went on to make an even higher move above that jump. And so these targets were given, one in February, one in July, early July, and now the price is moving towards those targets. So if we look at the 60-minute chart, this data all coming from either LSEG or Metastock Zenith. They're the same. If you're a professional user, you'll be using LSEG. If you're a private user, you can use Metastock Zenith. Essentially the same system. And again, you can see that jump. That has produced a price target. And so that's the key. The interesting thing is we're seeing strength above the trend. If I go to the other end of the scale, if I look at Nike, this just highlights the strong get stronger and the weak get weaker. And that's a really clear downtrend on the daily chart. Downside target. We can go to the short-term chart. We can see it's a bit more mixed. And we go to the long-term chart. We've got very long-term downside targets that have been in place for Nike. And again, I can go to Merk for those long-term targets. And there aren't any targets because we haven't had the pullback. But you can see the significance of once we broke that resistance level, marked with that magenta line, those are the automated Linton levels, then we've broken above there. So really quite key. Now, the other performer yesterday was Nvidia. Upside target there, still in place on the long-term chart. The medium term, we've got upside targets as well, but we are struggling to make a new high. I talked about Nvidia yesterday in Charts Today. Just really the interesting thing is that most of the performance in Nvidia was last year. And we can see here it's a mixed picture on the short term. Goldman Sachs, third on the list yesterday, up 2%. Long-term picture, very bullish, upside targets. Once it broke that 400 level, it really ran, nearly tripled in the space of a couple of years. We've got a mixed picture at the moment, a downside target. There's resistance at 1150, waiting to see if we activate that upside target. We can go to the short term and we can see here that, again, it's a bit more mixed, so it's not as clear. IBM were the fourth performer yesterday. Not so good. We're seeing the medium-term chart below the trend there. We can go to the long-term chart and you can see that volatility really kicking in. And by the way, on Friday for the London Stock Exchange Group, I recorded my monthly webinar. You can go to the Updater website, updater.co.uk, resources. And if you look at resources, LSEG Masterclass and Fridays was on volatility. So this is a you can only register for these if you're a professional with the London Stock Exchange Group, but we put these recordings up so you can watch them as well. So do keep an eye on there, and all the monthly ones are there, and you can see last year's ones here right from the beginning. I've been doing this for over a year for the London Stock Exchange Group, so you do learn from those. Those are really quite key. Looking next, we've got Sherwin-Williams. They have also just really underperformed. This is, again, the long term. The weekly chart automatically puts long term on your chart. Microsoft really has struggled, and again, quite a lot of volatility in the price. Looking at the medium-term chart for Microsoft, we see that we're waiting to see if we can activate this upside target after a period of underperformance. Cisco was a very strong chart there for a while, just jumped in April, but has hit the buffers. Unlike Merk, which has gone on to make a new high, Cisco has been quite challenging. Disney looks like it's turned a corner. This is the medium-term chart. Go to the short-term chart for what's going on. Multiple upside targets there on the 60-minute chart. And then on the long-term chart, we really need to break that 125 level for a convincing recovery. Recoveries can take time, remember. Visa just activated it this week, this last few weeks, a big upside target, breaking to new all-time highs. We look at the daily chart, we see that break of that previous resistance level, and you can go to the short-term chart and see the targets there as well. So really quite key. This is basically the way you want to find the stocks that are in uptrends and have got upside targets, and that's really what we're looking for. And you want to avoid stocks that are in downtrends. Now here's Salesforce, and so it's interesting that the Dow has got quite a bit of tech in it. So here we've got the medium-term chart for Salesforce. The long-term chart has been really a pretty vicious downtrend, and then if we look at the short-term chart, we are in an uptrend. So it just means that you have to be aware of the different time horizons and the trends. And again, the very first session that I did for LSEG, you can find it when you go to the LSEG Masterclass, click on last year's videos. The very first session was what's your time horizon, a really important aspect. And the power of technical analysis is that we can look at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And I go right down to 1 minute charts for a lot of my analysis. So this is an MBP. This is the UK gas price, which is significant today because the price has been fixed by Ofgem, and it's increased by 4% since the last fixing. But you can see, luckily, we've just had a bit of a fall away in the last 2 days. This is the 60-minute chart, but for my morning call, I go right down to the 1 minute chart, and so this is where we're thinking hours ahead. So if you're a short-term trader and you're trading something like Bitcoin, then you will want to look at those 1 minute charts. So for this is the daily chart, the 60-minute chart, and you can go right down to the 1 minute chart where you're going to see the action. So that's it for today. Have a great day. Keep an eye on those trends and those targets. Until tomorrow, bye for now.